everybody. How's it going? Might look a little tired and wiped out today. I didn't sleep that well last night, but I wanted to do a little book haul video, mini book haul for March. I didn't get quite as many books in as I had hoped. I went back to the Colombo Cornershop. For those of you who saw some of my recent videos in this year, I think I posted one in December, one in January, or one in something like that. Maybe January and February. Anyway, I made 2 trips to this bookstore, and the owner of the store is just a little tiny small shop, and above he has a bunch of books in storage, and he had 3 stacks of fantasy and science fiction books, vintage paperbacks, a lot of them from the UK, not all, of course. And I was quite pleased with what I found there in the first 2 visits. Now, what I should have done is called first, but alas, I didn't. I just showed up, but I probably waited a little too long. I pushed it into early March, and when I went there, I said, "Hey, how about that 3rd stack?" And he said, "Oh, sorry, I brought it down already before, and somebody bought every single one of them. They were all gone. There was nothing left, and a lot of even of his leftovers that I hadn't taken from the previous 2 stacks were also gone. Luckily, there were a few things left, and I snagged a couple of books from there, but I was a little disappointed, needless to say. Now, you know, it's no big deal. I'll find more books down the road, but it was a little bit of a bummer to go up kind of all the way downtown and then find out that what I was looking for, or was hopefully looking for, wasn't there. The thing that really is the rub, I guess, for me is you never know. You know, you start to imagine what was in that stack. You know, first stack had British Robert E. Howard paperback and some other really cool things. And what else might have been in that stack that I missed? So, you know, c'est la vie. It's the way it goes. Anyway, I'll show you what I got here. Some things from, again, that same bookstore, used bookstore in downtown Osaka. And the rest came through Amazon. Now, I know a lot of people don't like to order books from Amazon or give Amazon or Bezos any money, but it's one of the only games in town for me over here in Japan. So Amazon Marketplace, Amazon, for newer things, regular Amazon, it's a safe and reliable way to get some of those books. You know, I did another online purchase from the US of 6 of the Nostalgia Ventures Shadow pulp reprints. They have like 2 novels in each. And, you know, the vendor took my money, and I have not seen those books ever arrive. So, you know, you play your cards and takes your chances, I guess. But that happens rarely. And with Amazon, of course, it's pretty reliable. So anyway, let me get on to my March mini haul. I will show you a few of these books, and I think they're pretty cool. Small stack, but, well, you know, quality over quantity is always the important thing. Some of these, I don't know their quality, so we'll just have to see. Okay, well, let's take a look at, first, the Colombo Cornershop kind of last dregs haul, although I think these are pretty cool. We have Thor, however you want to pronounce this, Thor, by Piers Anthony. Again, these are another one of his earlier science fiction books before he, focused strictly on fantasy or comedic, lecherous fantasy like in the Xanth books. I've heard some decent things about his early science fiction kind of, I don't know how you would call them, planetary romance, not exactly, but sounds interesting. It's a Berkeley novel. And cataclysmic galactic combat played out in the legendary caverns of Cthon. He obviously liked using some, extra consonants in there. A novel of Cthon and the Minionettes. First time in paperback. And pretty cool cover there. Let's see if we got a cover credit. Illustration credit. And we do not. So, but, interesting cover, I think. And it appears to be a wraparound cover. So I'll just read you a little bit on the back. This was, from the back blurb, this was published in 1975. So, combat in the caverns. Arlo is the son of Aton, conqueror and victim of a dreaded mignonette. Arlo is known no world but the cavern world. When war comes to the caverns, he is a confused spectator. Men, women, and other creatures bearing exotic weapons invade. The women fascinate Arlo. They seem disturbingly familiar to him. Well, they might, for these beautiful, identical, fiery-haired, and smoky-eyed savage warriors are mignonettes, figures of terror and dread on all civilized worlds, and they are his kin. Arlo's fate is to battle them and the superintelligence of Chthon at once, to work out a destiny shaped by a god more ancient than mankind, the destiny of the galaxy as well as his own. So, again, like a lot of these Colombo Cornershop books, they're a little older, faded inside, maybe because they were kept in storage rather than in pristine conditions, but, pretty good shape. Glad to get that one. The next couple I got are in nice shape for sure, and these are Star books. These Star books are published by Wyndham Publishing in London, so these are British paperbacks. We have two by Dion Fortune, Mistress of Ritual Magic, The Winged Bull. Pretty cool cover there. Beyond the Limits of the Mind, and Moon Magic. Lilith LaFay, Priestess of Black Isis. From what little I know about Dion Fortune, she had some kind of order, some kind of religion or New Age spiritualistic movement she was part of, and wrote these novels. These seem to be dating from the late 70s, I believe 1976 for Moon Magic, and 1976 also. At least they might have been written earlier, but at least that's the only credit I have, or only copyright I have in these. I, again, don't think I have information on the cover artist, but interesting. So let's start with this one, just to talk a little bit about these. The Winged Bull. Let's see, it says have a little blurb here on the top of both on the back. The author's knowledge and experience of psychology are indisputable, and her ability to expound the modus operandi of magic is second to none. The Occult Review. Beyond the Limits of the Mind, a chance meeting in the swirling London fog plunged Ted Murchison into a fearfully unfamiliar world. A world in which a role had already been planned for him, according to the ancient cult of the Winged Bull. For Colonel Brangwyn, his new employer, was engaged in the release of his sister from the malignant influence of a black magician, a man who schemed to use her in a dangerous, obscene ritual. Her sanity was already failing, and to save it, Murchison was needed to undergo certain magical experiments that would draw her back to the world she knew. Reluctantly, Murchison agreed, but it was a pact that would have untold consequences, both for himself and on his strange developing relationship with the girl. So, shades of Dennis Wheatley, I would say, in the Duc de Richelieu novels, kind of forces of good magic against bad magic. Sounds pretty interesting. And Moon Magic, and again we have an interesting cover there. A mysterious cloaked figure continually haunted the dreams of Dr. Rupert Malcolm. The figure took hold of his imagination until it became a reality, moving before him through the dusk over the wet London streets, just as it had done so often through the landscape of sleep. Obsessed with his fantasy, Malcolm searched for it at every available waking moment until, late one evening, a woman entered his surgery, a woman identical to the very fabric of his vision. And then we have a quote from the Times Literary Supplement. A good story written without sophistication and with real people against an unusual background. Now, that sounds like a backhanded compliment to me, but the powerful sequel to The Sea Priestess. And again, you see the Star Book logo on the front and the Wyndham Publications logo on the back, which is interesting. Wyndham spelled like John Wyndham, although I don't know if he had anything to do with it. This series apparently includes The Demon Lover, the Sea Priestess, the Goatfoot God, the Winged Bull, and Moon Magic. So it looks like I might have gotten the last two in the series. And it says here a little bit about Dion Fortune. Perhaps no other occultist in the 20th century has so fully combined a practical knowledge of magic with a thorough understanding of psychology as Dion Fortune, which I'm sure is not her real name. The first mass market paperback editions of her famous novels are well overdue, marking as they do a peak of literary entertainment and a disturbingly authoritative introduction to the ancient teachings of the occult. Now, I haven't done any research really on Dion Fortune. I'm guessing these novels were written earlier, and this is their first paperback publication. But I'm not, and they sound interesting, sound pretty cool. I think Nick at the Book Graveyard and his wife are interested in this kind of series by Dion Fortune. So Nick, if you're watching and you're interested in these, I'd be glad to pass them on to you. I'll take a look at them myself, but I'm not quite sure what to make of these. But I thought they were pretty cool. They're in good shape. And if I didn't like them, I figured, or not particularly my cup of tea, I figured they would be someone else's, particularly maybe Nick and his wife. So we'll see what they think. Okay, the last two books I got from the Colombo Cornershop were these two Pan Spectrum collections. So we have Spectrum 3, Spectrum number 3. And then we have Spectrum 4. And again, these are in pretty good shape. These are Pan book anthologies, science fiction anthologies, and anthologies selected and edited by Kingsley Amis and Robert Conquest. And I believe the same gentleman edited the second one, Spectrum 4. So some cool stories in here. And I'm always down for collecting some anthologies, so I have some short stories or novelettes to read. So this one has more novelettes, I think, or novellas in some cases. So this one starts with Killdozer by Theodore Sturgeon. So I've seen the movie Killdozer, but I've never read the novella or novelette. It looks like it's about 80-some pages or so, and I'm curious about how the story goes compared to the TV movie with Clint Walker, which I enjoyed quite a bit from the 70s. We have The Voice of Time by J.G. Ballard, Call Me Joe by Paul Anderson. We Would See a Sign by Mark Rose, Dreams Are Sacred by Peter Phillips, Exploration Team by Murray Leinster, one of my all-time favorite science fiction short stories or novelettes. I really, really like that one. It's very cool. Fans of animal lovers would like this story, as it involves a kind of explorer survey guy on this planet with hostile life forms, and he has a team of bears, intelligent bears, that work with him. They don't talk or anything, but you can communicate with them kind of, and they work kind of like smart dogs or whatever, and they work together to fight off these inimical creatures that are on this planet. It's a pretty cool story. Fondly Fahrenheit by Alfred Bester and The Sentinel, very famous story by Arthur C. Clarke. And this is the second printing from 1971, but it was originally printed in 1963 in London. So that's very cool. And more shorter works and more of them in this collection, Spectrum 4. Again, we got a kind of weird cover. I'm not quite sure what to think of the cover, but this includes some kind of strange story that involves both C.S. Lewis, Brian W. Aldiss, and Kingsley Amis. So interesting. Then we have The Marching Morons by C.M. Kornbluth. I think that's a pretty famous story. I've heard of that before. We have, I'll just run through the authors. We have Christopher Anvil, John Brunner, John Jakes, Howard Fast, Anthony Boucher, Alan Danzig, John Wyndham, Cordwainer Smith, A Planet Named Sheol. I think that's quite a famous story as well. Ron Goulart, Fritz Leiber, Damon Knight, Hal Clement, and Wayland Young. So that's a pretty strong group of writers there. And, it's a pretty substantial length anthology. It's 334 pages here. I believe this one also published in originally 1965. Doesn't give a date for the second printing, which is interesting, but I'm assuming it's around, obviously later than Spectrum 3. Okay, then as some of you have noticed me reviewing the occasional graphic novel or a collected edition trade paperback of some comics. I've been trying to get into a few more comics on the channel. Not the most popular or watched videos, but I'm enjoying them. And the DC Compact Comics line, they're a nice price, and they have complete storylines in one edition. So I've been wanting to get some of these for a while. They've been temporarily out of stock in Japan, and until just recently I saw them come back into stock and I snagged them. They're all about $10 each or so. I got DC The New Frontier, which is by Darwin Cook, art and story, writer and artist of this. And Dave Stewart is the colorist. I'm not going to talk much about this one because I just recorded a live stream with David at Garage Geek on his channel. We buddy read this one and we talked about it at length in that live stream. But just suffice to say, it's a very cool kind of retro, kind of post-World War II up into the early 60s era, I guess, where it follows the Silver Age DC heroes kind of taking the mantle over from the Golden Age types like Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, who do have appearances in this, but are not, the main focus. Very interesting story. If you're interested in our thoughts, David and I's thoughts, please check out that live stream. Also, a much thinner one. This one is almost, 496 pages or something. This one is much, much less, but this is Kingdom Come by Mark Wald, and Alex Ross is the artist. And this has some really interesting kind of realistic style art. And this intrigued me because this is about, the Golden Age heroes like Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman, etc. have gotten older and kind of stepped back from public service. At least that's the premise as I understand it. And a new crop of younger superheroes have taken over, and they're getting more and more violent and kind of going against the principles of these Golden Age heroes. And so these older heroes decide to come back and bitch slap around these younger guys and gals to kind of get them course corrected. Sounds pretty fun. I'm looking forward to that one. And, there's more and more coming out of the DC Compact Comics line. Say that 3 times fast. It's a little hard, easy to trip the tongue there. But there's a lot of them that I'm not really interested in, and there's some others that haven't come out yet that I'm interested in. But this one was, I took a gamble on this, but it looks pretty cool. Nightwing leaping into the light. And this is, of course, about Nightwing. As far as I know about Nightwing, he's one of the Robins. Maybe, is it Dick Grayson or not the original Robin? It's a different one. Anyway, he leaves Batman's, service, I guess, and strikes out on his own to do his own superheroics in another city. And this is by Tom Taylor with art by Bruno Redondo. And this also looks quite cool. So he seems to have sometimes meeting up with people like Barry Allen's Flash. I think that's Barry Allen anyway. And he's got a cool dog companion, which I can never find and there's Superboy, etc. So there are some kind of cameos by some, famous maybe Teen Titan type characters. Again, this is kind of a new ground for me. I don't really know a whole lot about these kind of characters, but it looks fun. So I'm looking forward to getting into that. Okay, the last one I have to show you, I had originally ordered the big book of, I've been trying to collect these big books. I don't know if you can see them down here. I've shown some of them off in a video and other book hauls that I've been collecting them. And I've been trying to get a hold of more and more of the 15 or so that have been put out by Otto Penzler. They're massive anthologies, trade paperback anthologies. And I tried to order the big book of Rogues and Villains, which had a lot of cool stories in there. And the company I used, I think it was called The World Book or something, never contacted me. I gave them about 35, 40 days for the shipment to arrive, and never came. So I did a kind of follow-up check with Amazon, and then they, you know, poked the company, and the company came back and said, well, the book apparently got damaged in transit and we don't have another, so here's a refund. Thanks for telling me when, 5-6 weeks after the fact. So I was not pleased about that, because I do want that book and I will reorder it. But not wanting to wait a huge long time for, again, another cycle of it shipping from the UK, or where most of these come from, and arriving in Japan weeks later, I found one of these big book anthologies that I didn't have that was actually in stock here in Japan. And it's, I believe the second or third one that ever came out. Maybe the second. The Vampire Archives. Look at this big beast, full of vampire stories. Now, this one's a little different because it's got a shiny, this is a used copy, but it looks in really nice shape. It's got a little bit of a slight ding or warp. I don't know if you can see it with the shininess on the back flap here, but it's got a smooth surface, whereas most of these have kind of more of a textured cover. In fact, I think all of them do pretty much, but I may be wrong on that, but they pretty much have a similar feel, all of them. This one's different. It's a little shinier, but the most complete volume of vampire tales ever published, which is a bold claim, but I think they're onto something here. I think there's quite a bit of good stuff in here. The Vampire Archives is the biggest, hungriest, undeadliest collection of vampire stories ever assembled. Dark, stormy, and delicious. Once it sinks its teeth into you, there's no escape. And again, this is set up in the usual fashion of these big book of anthologies, where they have, tons of stories, and they have introductions by Otto Penzler, and then the stories are in double column pulp style, format. And just to give you an idea of, not by any stretch all of the stories in this, but all of the authors who provide stories for this collection, this anthology. Here's just a handful of, a large dollop, I should say, of writers, very famous or well-known weird fiction or horror writers that have contributed stories to this collection, this anthology. We have Ambrose Bierce, Sheridan Le Fanu, of course, Carmilla is in this. His famous story, Edgar Allan Poe, Carl Jacobi, who is a weird tales writer, M.R. James, who, yes, was mostly known as a ghost story writer for his ghost stories, but he did write a very good vampire story. And maybe more than one. Anne Rice, of course, H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, Algernon Blackwood, Tanith Lee, Goethe, however you pronounce his name, Lord Byron, Charles Beaumont, Ed Gorman, David J. Scow, E.F. Benson, For the Blood is the Life is probably the story in there. That's one of his most famous horror stories. Manly Wade Wellman has a couple stories in here, including Chastel, which is a story I reviewed or talked about earlier on my channel. D.H. Lawrence, Arthur Conan Doyle, Brian Stableford, Lisa Tuttle, Dion Fortune again. We talked about Dion Fortune just a while ago. Clive Barker, Gahan Wilson, Dan Simmons, the late Dan Simmons, rest in peace. Richard Lehman, Ray Bradbury, Brian Lumley, Fritz Leiber, Guy de Maupassant, Hugh B. Cave, Frederick Brown, R. Chetwynd Hayes, Richard Matheson, Roger Zelazny, Robert Bloch, etc. So that again is not covering the whole list of authors. There's quite a few that are less familiar, some earlier writers, and also later ones that have worthy stories, I'm sure. Now, the one odd thing that's different from the usual big book of collection is, instead of cramming in a bunch more stories, which they could have, for whatever reason, the publishers opted to include the vampire a bibliography, so like 100 pages of, bibliography of vampire literature, which I guess is useful. But, you know, that's on page 919, and it goes until page 1029. So we're talking 110 pages. Could have probably put another 4-5 stories in there for that or more in that space, but for whatever reason, I guess Penzler and Company thought they were providing a service with all those stories noted in the bibliography there. None of the other anthologies in this series do that, but this was early on, so that might account for some of, early on in the run of those anthologies, so it might account for some of the discrepancies in overall format. But basically the same layout, same design, and same big chunking phone book full of good stories. So that's my book haul. I hope you found something cool in there. I know I am looking forward to digging into some of these. So until next time, take care, have a great week or great day, enjoy what you're reading, and we'll see you again real soon.